Welcome back to the podcast, Suzy Ashworth. It is so amazing to have you here again. Would you like to do a quick intro to yourself before we?
Well, thank you very much for having me again. I deeply appreciate it. And the way that I am introducing myself now, I think it's always a single mum of three kids first. My kids are 13, 11, and 7, and they are absolutely the most important thing. And then from a business perspective, we are helping coaches build businesses that change lives. That is it in a nutshell. And we do that through our certification. And then from a business perspective, just really simple, smart sales and marketing strategies.
I love your voice. You were meant for
Thank
this
you.
job. Your voice is very mesmerizing. Love your podcast as well. Make sure I'll pop a link in the show notes to go check out Suzy's podcast. The reason I brought you on the podcast again is because you have just launched your new book,
Mm,
Infinite Receiving.
yeah.
And I'm really excited to talk to you about it. This is not your first book, though, is it?
It's really interesting because when you said new book, it's almost like I always forget that this is the second book that I have published with Hay House. And actually, on my bookshelf, it is the third book because I self published the first time around. So I now have three published books. I also have another book on sales, which is an ebook that I have self published and my clients can get their hands on. So it's like, oh, this book thing, you're a bit of an old hand at. And at the same time, it really does feel like my first book in many respects.
So why is that? Why does it feel like your first book?
I think that it feels like my first book because the other books I made for business and this book I made for me. And so
Ooh.
it has, and it's funny because the first book I talk about my birth. So it's pretty intimate and pretty vulnerable. But this book, I'm talking about my life, how I've got into this space of being able to live into this frequency of infinite receiving a lot of my time. And at the same time, being on this continued journey of deepening what infinite receiving means to me and how I get to live through that in my life. But it is very, very personal. And I don't think that with anything else I've written, I've put myself on the line as much as, or not myself, my heart on the line as much as I did with this book, which is why I was saying to you before we came online that if it had been up to me, the book probably wouldn't have been out by now because I would have still been tweaking and perfecting. And I just need to make that sound a little bit better. And is that the best I could say? I talk in the book about the pillar of greatness and how much that chapter was so challenging for me to write because my smaller self, my inner child, the side of me that is like, you're not good enough, this could be better, that was rampant. That was so loud in my head. And at the same time, my higher self was like, we've got this. And so it was a real, the duality of life, the polarity of life lived through me whilst writing this book like you would not believe.
It's crazy for content creators like us who are constantly putting things out in the world,
Mm.
how for some reason I make mistakes in my podcast, in my
Yes.
blogs, in my social posts, and they are all up there for the world to see.
Yeah.
And when I was writing this book, I cannot tell you how many times I reread it, making sure each full stop was in the right spot.
Yeah.
And I've still found mistakes in
I
it.
know. Yeah.
It's
It's
it's a
so
very
hard.
crazy journey.
I even took a picture of a page where there was like a run on the sentences. I was like, how did that? And that was a printing error, obviously. But I'm like, oh, we've already done a second print run. Like, if only I had read to that bit in the book the first time, we could have got it on the second print run. So it's just this constant. And at the same time, it's enough. And at the same time, I'm enough. And at the same time, the content of this book is amazing. And yes, there are mistakes in it. And yes, there are bits that I would love to communicate even more profoundly and potently and powerfully. And I know that this book is touching people's hearts in a way that I had hoped, absolutely, but perhaps didn't allow myself to truly imagine. So
yeah.
it's good.
What's the book about? Let's actually. We're talking all about the book. Will you share with the listeners a little bit about what infinite receiving is all about?
Yeah. So the book's called Infinite Receiving, Crack the Code to Conscious Wealth Creation and Finally Manifest Your Dream Life. And so really, the type of person who wants to pick up this book is somebody who wants more out of life, somebody who knows that there is more available to them, but hasn't quite been able to touch it in the way that they desire, or somebody who's already living a fucking great life and still has already given themselves permission to want more and doesn't know how to get over the precipice of that. And this is what infinite receiving is about on a very surface level. But if you only want to go surface, great, you're going to get a lot out of this book. On a deeper level, this book is about knowing who you are and the limitless and boundless potential that is housed within you, and knowing that that potential exists irrespective of your bank balance, irrespective of the last launch, irrespective of whether you're married, divorced, whether your kids are doing amazing at school or not amazing at school. It's really knowing the magic of who you are as a human being. And the desire that I have is for people to be able to touch that magic within themselves. And then from that place, start creating even more magic in their life because it's fun, because they know that they are worthy and deserving of it, because the journey and the lessons and the ups and the downs all get to be part of this beautiful cascade of receiving that you cannot stop. And when you're able to interact with life in that way, you understand, not just in hindsight, but in the moment, that you're creating a fucking masterpiece. And that is something to celebrate. And that way of interacting with life actually is quite unique. And so what happens when you turn that switch on is that people are activated by you, sometimes really positively, many times really positively, and other times can be a little bit triggered, like, what the fuck is going on with her? Like, and what that is, what people are noticing is, wow, this person is shining and I desire to shine in that way. And so you get to be a model for what is possible. You become more attractive. People want to be in your space. People want to, it's like the upside of it is like, oh, what are you drinking? I want some of that. And so it's this particularly for, I mean, it's for everybody, but in business, this is a particularly powerful and potent frequency to be operating from and in. And so that is what the book is about in a nutshell.
Okay, there was something you touched on in there, which was funny because I was instantly wondering where people's mind might go when you went from a space of, because it's well and good to say, I want to create this dream life. I think that it's very triggering when you say, or people who've got an amazing life and who want more. That was instantly what jumped out at me. And I thought there would be a lot of people who were like, how dare someone who already has the house, the relationship, the money, the successful business, whatever the thing is that clearly they desire. And how dare they then want more? And I know that I am guilty of experiencing this, you know, when you see people and then they're making even more money and even more money, you're thinking, you know, how come some people just keep going up and up and up, and other people, at least in terms of external, you know, materialistic things, are really struggling. So why is the art of infinite receiving important to those people as well?
I think that ultimately the first thing to say is that your measure of success should never just be your material output, like what you have achieved. I'm doing inverted commas materially. And one of the things that I say in the book is that when you're operating from this place of infinite receiving, the material gains are like the cherry on top of the cake, but you take the cherry away and you've still got the cake. You are the cake. And I think that often when people are talking about manifestation and creating your dream life, the way that it's approached is that the house determines your worthiness. So the bigger the house, the more worthy you are. And I think that that's what triggers people who haven't got there yet, because what they're looking at is that that big house must mean that they are more worthy and more deserving than me, but I'm a good person. So why are they more worthy? Why have they? And that is not what we are talking about. In the book, I use the analogy of a baby. And I talk about this in two different ways. And the first way is when you look at a baby, a newborn, squishy, puffy cheeks, like just a beautiful baby, do you ever look at it and be like, when you can talk, you will be worthy. When you can walk, you will be deserving of my love and my attention. That is not who we are. We look at this baby. And if you're not a baby person, I want you just to imagine just one of your family members, a small child,
Or a
you look at
puppy.
them, or a puppy, if you're an animal person. You're worthy and deserving just by being born. There is no performance that is required of you. Like there is just excitement and curiosity about what it is that you get to create. But you are born whole, complete, and worthy and deserving. And this is a big part of the book, is showing people how to remember that they are that baby. I was born complete. And the fact that I have created material wealth is irrespective of that. And if my business crashes and burns tomorrow, the practice is, do I know that I am still worthy of love? Do I still know that I am deserving? Do I still get to choose to belong? And these are some of the things that keep people on the outside of themselves, let alone their communities, not feeling worthy, not feeling deserving enough, not feeling like they belong. And so that, when you're in that space, you've immediately turned the dial up on what I'm talking about when it comes to infinite receiving. The second way I talk about the baby is that it is in our innate nature to want more. So a baby that is physically able will be absolutely happy on their back, like, you know, just like looking and crying and demanding, and I want to be fed and I want to change my butt. And then one day they will notice that there is somebody sitting up. And it's like innately the baby's like, I want to sit up. And then the next phase of that is that they go from like being happy sitting up and people bringing their toys and their rattles and the thing. And then one day they'll see somebody crawling. And they're like, I want to walk. Like it is in our nature to want more, to evolve. And for me, infinite receiving, particularly when I talk specifically about the manifestation part of it, it's natural evolution. Like, how much more can I create? I'm talking about this from a creation perspective. And whether you choose to put your energy into money or property or traveling or your art or creating jewelry or whatever your thing is, gets to be your thing, but it is within your nature once you've cracked a certain level to then see what else is available, not because you need it to make yourself feel better, not because you're trying to prove anything to yourself or the world, not because you're trying to validate yourself, but because it's in your fucking nature to want to evolve. And so much of people's frustration with themselves, with their lives, with other people, is that they can see people evolving and moving, and they feel like they are static, like they're treading water. And so it's because there's no stretch. And so infinite receiving is about the stretch that gets to happen, who you get to evolve into, who you get to become in order to create that next level of expansion. And so that it's normal, it's allowed. And the moment that you take out the need to prove anything to yourself or anybody else, it becomes pure. And that's the game that we get to play. How does that land with you?
So many things that I want to say about it. So, one of the things that you said is that we are all wired for growth. And I actually had a really interesting conversation with my husband about it today because we were talking about wealth creation. And I said to him, I wonder at what stage people like you just live a stress-free life. You just don't stress. And he said to me, when you don't have a mortgage, when you don't have debt, when you're financially secure. And then I said to him, well, hang on. I might look at people like Zuckerberg and all these billionaires. I'm like, they're not sitting around stress-free on an island sipping on cocktails. I'm like, they're still in the mode of
Yeah,
creation.
creating. Yeah.
They don't need to ever work again.
So it's not about the money.
It's not about the money.
Yeah.
And the other thing that you touched on is that I've started to notice that some of my old friendship groups are like pushing me away, and I'll reach out
Yeah.
and they're sort of not coming back to me.
Yeah.
And I was originally like, what's a couple in two different circles specifically. And then I had this moment and I realized I'm on this journey that is
Yeah.
triggering them. They don't
Yeah.
want to catch up with me and hear about my boat and my overseas holidays because that is not even in their sphere of something
Yes.
they would desire. And so the
Yeah.
easiest way for them to feel more comfortable is to separate themselves from that thing. But ironically, they must desire to have something like that, or they wouldn't care. Like, why
Yeah.
would that upset them? Why would that trigger them
Yeah.
if they weren't on some level wanting to create, desiring to have a bigger life?
And that's it. It might not be the boat, but it is the bigger life. It is the evolution. And I want to put yet because some of those people might come back
Oh,
around
yeah.
if you are
Yeah.
open and available to it. But yes, it can be triggering. I think the other thing that I think is really important to say is that when I talk about wealth, I talk about the wealth trifecta. So I talk about intrinsic wealth, and that is our connection to our higher self, also to source. It is about having a regulated nervous system. It's about your sense of self and security, and that coming from inside of you. And that is really, really important because the idea that when I have no mortgage or £1 billion, that I don't stress because I've got all of that money is bullshit.
Yeah.
You have to be the creator of your internal sense of safety. Then you are unfuckable with. And I talk about people like Viktor Frankl, Nelson Mandela. These guys were in the most like heinous conditions, the most amount of stress, but what they were able to cultivate is this intrinsic wealth, where they were the rulers of their own sense of safety. That, when you're in that mode, you're in infinite receiving mode. Then got experiential wealth, and that is your experience of life. So for me, I listen to some entrepreneurs online, and I listen to them because I take some nuggets, but I also was listening to a lady the other day. I've got huge respect for what she's done in business, but she was saying how she has created, or she created $100 million in net worth before the age of 30 by saying no to weddings, no to birthdays, no to anything that would really distract her from business. And I thought, for me, that's not in my highest alignment. For me, that would diminish my experience of life. That diminishes my experiential wealth. And so I'm not going to be making those choices. And now that might mean that impacts my leverageable wealth, which is the third point in the trifecta. I'm okay with that. And so it is really being able to tune into what is in my highest alignment for me, and then choosing to act in alignment with that. But I don't think a person can truly say that they're wealthy if they are not wealthy for them in all three dimensions of the trifecta.
Yeah, I know what you mean. So if people's curiosity is piqued and they okay, well, what does this actually look like, Suzy? Can we talk a little bit about the 4 pillars that you mentioned inside the book?
Yeah, so the 4 pillars are the framework for infinite receiving, and they are the pillars that I personally have had to live into and kind of unlock at every single level. And so the first pillar is the infinite pillar of greatness, and that is really knowing your greatness. And what's really interesting is often when I say to people, do you think that you're great? People are like, I'm great. And like, at least in my world, people are like, I'm great. And you kind of only need to scratch a little bit beyond the surface to be like, are you really living your life like you are the greatest thing since sliced bread? And the answer very frequently is no, because it's absolutely not safe and not celebrated for people to own their unique greatness, at least beyond a certain point. And we see this with celebrities all of the time. You know, look at Taylor Swift. It's like, she's the best thing. She's the best. She's the best. Who the fuck is Taylor Swift? Why is she doing this? Why is she doing, like, we see that in cancel culture all of the time. And the safest thing, if you desire to belong, and we all desire to belong, is just to keep your light dimmed just enough not to be too much. And if you want to create a life where you are receiving infinitely, where you are infinitely magnetic, where you're attracting your dreamboat clients, your partners, whatever it is, where you are feeling rich, you have to know how fucking great you are. And then you have to act from that place. And I talk about this on a kind of universal level, as in, like, there's only ever going to be one of you, right? You know that. You know that there is never anybody who was the same as you before, and there is never anybody else that is going to come after you that has your same energetic footprint. Like, you do know that, right? Because it's normal, people take it for granted. And it's like, that in and of itself, for me, is like, as soon as I start thinking about it, I'm like, there's only ever one me. It's like, nobody is going to be able to write infinite receiving the way that I've written it. There are some new things in there that you will have not heard. There are some things that are going to be beautiful reminders. But as I said, I put my energetic signature on this. Nobody's ever going to be able to replicate that, not even a really good AI.
Do you know, I was just thinking that. I was like, maybe an AI will analyze all of your online data and be able to reproduce it. AI is not Suzy. They will
AI
attempt
is
to be
not
Suzy.
Suzy.
They will
Yeah.
not be Suzy.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because artists, right, that's the biggest thing. Like, but I think that, again, when I read this book, when I take this out in workshops, when I do retreats on this book, there's no way that can replicate my energetic signature. You might be able to get, but you can't. It's never going to be me. And when you are able to give yourself permission to act from this place, things start to shift. And so I talk a lot in the book about the lessons that we get to unlearn to help give ourselves permission to step into that pillar. That was a huge unlock for me. And at the same time, like I said, when I was writing the bloody book, I was in massive polarity. I'm writing the chapter on knowing your greatness whilst being really insecure about it. And like, is this good enough?
Yeah.
So it's ongoing work. Every time the book was a stretch, I'd never put my heart on the line like I was doing with this book. And so it was forcing me to the edge of my comfort zone. And every time we get to the edge of our comfort zone, it's normal for us to doubt. And that's why I say that this book and the contents of it is a lifetime's work. Every time you want to do the stretch, you go back into the book. Anyway, second pillar is the pillar of infinite support. And I talk about that on a community level and on a 3D connection to source, connection to universe. And for me, as a single mum of 3 kids, also a Black woman, there was a lot imprinted in my identity around I can do it all. I've got it all. I'm good. I don't need help. And if you want to increase your capacity to receive, you have to allow yourself to be supported. Like you just do. You can't 10x your impact and 10x your income while still doing it all yourself. And so, again, unlearning the lessons and tuning into what is going to be required for me to upgrade my identity, because it is an identity upgrade to allow yourself to be supported, is the second pillar. The third pillar, which probably is the pillar that I've done the most work around, is the pillar of infinite love. And I've spoken about this in relation to being willing to have your heart smashed into 1,000 pieces because you're willing to put your heart on the line. You know, I know the people in your community will probably relate to being heart-centered. I was heart-centered, but I was living my life with my heart closed because I was afraid of it being broken. You can't receive infinitely if your heart is closed because you can't be vulnerable. I needed to go all in on the book. That meant putting myself at risk of ridicule, of failure, of judgment. That's what it means to allow your heart to open. And so I talk about love in the traditional sense, allowing yourself to be loved and allowing yourself to be a lover. And the piece I really want people to tune into is that opening your heart takes vulnerability. And there are many places where at the moment you want a result, but you're not willing to go all in because it scares the fuck out of you. So again, doing the work, I include like somatic exercises and meditations to help people with that process of heart opening. And also there's a lot of reflection. You know, all of the places where you learned that it wasn't safe to open your heart because people were going to hurt you. And so looking at how that is impacting your presence, where do we need more forgiveness? And talking about how that gets to work, even when we really feel justified in protecting ourselves and defending our hearts. And then the final piece is the pillar of infinite co-creation. And that's the magic, that's the manifestation part. And I share my 5 steps for manifesting in that chapter. And if you only worked on the first 3 pillars, you will see what you are creating, what you are allowing, what you are receiving in your life grow exponentially, even without the 5-step process. Because, as I said, what this frequency does is create a whole new level of magnetism around you. And I'm seeing it with the book, because it's invited me to step into the practices so much more. And the invitations I am receiving to do talks and workshops, and just before I came on, somebody that I used to work with many years ago in media, she's just like, I want to create this whole event and I would love for you to do a talk there. And I'm like, oh my God, that would be amazing. Not even thought about it. And it's just all of these incredible opportunities because I'm living from this place. And so that's the game, to live a life where you get to the end of it and say, I fucking lived it. And that is what this book gives you the building blocks for.
Why do you think most people don't allow themselves to desire their biggest life?
I think because we are programmed. A lot of it is just cultural programming. It's like, it's not safe to be bigger than where we've come from. I think because we're afraid of losing people, we're afraid of not belonging. And I think we're afraid of disappointing ourselves. I think that that's the biggest thing. What if I'm not capable of it? And I get that, because disappointing yourself feels horrendous. But I think one of the biggest lessons that I talk about in the book is, what if, and it's not a new lesson, but you get to apply this in a way that perhaps you haven't done before. What if the lesson or the real gift is in today's step, and who you got to become today in order to wake up and take another step tomorrow? And it's that journey of becoming the human. Like, the achievement, that's over in like 5 minutes. Oh, I got the car, great. Oh, I went on the holiday. The holiday lasted for 2 weeks, but who did I need to become in order to be a match for the dream holiday of my life, whilst honoring my nervous system and being there for my kids and going out in walks for nature? Like, who did I have to become to live my dream life before I got the thing? You know? And so with that, if I am every single day becoming the individual who is a match for the thing, what happens if something weird happens right at the end and I just don't get the thing? Well, nothing, because I'm living my fucking dream life on the way to it, and I'm enjoying it and I'm celebrating it and I'm appreciating it. Like, again, it's just the cherry. So if I just focus on the becoming, I'm exponentially increasing everything that is available to me every single day. And then it's like the 5-minute thing, the 2-week thing. Yeah, I can take it or leave it, because that isn't actually the point.
Mm-hmm.
Even though you are way more likely to get the thing because of who it is you become.
It's so true. And there's so much satisfaction in exactly this, looped right back to the start, in the process of change, and
Yes.
in recognizing and acknowledging as well that it's not too late.
Yeah.
I've been on a journey in the space of parenting recently, and I was getting to the point where I'm like, this is just unmanageable. I'm sure most parents can relate to reaching that point.
Yeah.
I have failed as a mother.
Yeah.
I have raised disobedient children.
Mm.
And this is the way that it is. And reaching a point of saying it's either this is this is just life, or
Yeah.
I have to just start making progress forward. Now, that was only very recently. I
Mm.
invested in a program, and I can't tell you, my kids, let me just be clear, there was a WWE wrestling match that was going on. Tears, it was all going on this afternoon. But what was such a beautiful and rewarding feeling in the process was my ability to manage my own emotions through that.
Mm.
And I was like, this is progress. I am by
Yeah.
far not a perfect, but I'm like, I can still, at my ripe old age, still
Yes.
be making incremental little changes. And that in itself is so fulfilling and rewarding. And even though the outcome of the perfectly behaved children hasn't
Luck
actually
with that.
materialized yet. Yeah, good
Yeah.
luck with that goal, Claire. I never say nothing is possible, but good luck with that one.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, there is so much joy, and I can't tell you, just even being able to regulate my emotions more. I'm like, this is
Yeah.
progress. And the fact that
Oh,
after so many years, I can make this change, it makes me think in business, in relationships, in all different areas, it's not too late to change.
I'm
And
46. Like, you remember when you were 20 and you thought 46 was like the oldest thing in the whole entire world?
but
I'm going
can
to be
I say,
50.
like, we
Yeah,
look a lot hotter than people did.
we do. We
I saw a
freaking
picture of
do.
my grandma. I worked out in this photo. She was 51 years old. She had the little grey perm. She had the cardigan on. And I'm like, I am nearly that age. She'd had a hip replacement, a knee replacement. She
Yeah,
was granny land. She was
yeah.
crocheting. But in all seriousness, it's not too late.
It's just the beginning.
Yeah.
Always. Every
Yeah.
day is a new day. And I just want to one say thank you for sharing that with your kids. You know, for me with my heart, my kids were the biggest motivation because when I realized I'd been living with my heart closed, I realized that it had not even been fully open to them, you know? Like exactly. It's like I love my kids. It hadn't been fully open to my ex-husband, you
Mm.
know? It's like you can get so far, but then I'm protecting myself. And when I realized that it had been touching every single element of my life for my entire life, and I'd still been functioning, and I'd still got clients, and I'd still got a business, and I'd still got relative success. It's like, oh, but what if you just let the bars down? What if you softened? What else could be available for you? And that's only been in the last 4.5, 5 years, you
Mm.
know, and my eldest is 13. And I'm so proud of the relationship that I have with all of my kids now. But I know that so much of that is radically different because of the way that I have chosen to work with my heart and that infinite pillar of love. So it's never too late. And this work can absolutely, it sounds so simple and like, yeah, of course, but it's sometimes the most simple truths are the most potent and powerful. And I think that that is, it wasn't my aim, but I think that that is what I have shared within the book.
Mm. If you were listening, surely you were thinking, I need to get my hands on a copy of Infinite Receiving. What's the
Yeah.
best place? A lot of my listeners are in Australia. I have listeners right across the world. Hello, everyone.
Yeah.
But a lot of my listeners are in Australia. What's the best place they can get their hands on the book?
So you can definitely get it on Amazon.
Hmm.
But what I will say is that we have a promo going on at the moment for our members club. And anybody who takes a free trial of the members club is also going to, in fact, have I done that the right way? I think it's the other way. Anybody who buys the book, which you can get on Amazon, can get a free trial of our members club. And when you do that, you get a whole load of merch and good fun things that's going to help you take in the teachings of infinite receiving, including a couple of courses. But you will be able to get it from Amazon. And once you do that, just send your receipt in and we'll give you lots of other stuff to go with it. There we go.
Fantastic. Amazing. Anything else, other ways that people can connect with you if they're loving your vibe, want to know more about working with you?
Yeah, SuzyAshworth.com is my website. And I, like Claire, love a little bit of the gram. So if you are a coach and you're looking for business tips and advice and all of that good stuff, then I'm pretty much daily over on the gram, Suzy, SUZY_Ashworth. You'll find me dancing and sharing and playing and all of that good stuff.
I'll put all of those links in the show notes for today's episode. Congratulations on the huge success of the launch of this book and on writing such an amazing and impactful book to share with the world. Thank you for coming on the podcast again, Suzy. I always love the opportunity to spend time with you.
Thank you, my love.